Everyone, and welcome. This is Elena, and today I have my second video for you in the series Stretching a Chameleon pens, and I'm going to show you two techniques. One is for watercoloring, and the second one is for vellum overlay. So let's get started. First, I'm going to stamp my card front, and I'm using a new stamp set from Paper Tray Ink. This was just released about 5-6 days ago. So it has this multi-step stamping, like color layering. So this works perfectly with the Faux watercoloring technique. So I'm just using Hero Arts shadow inks, and this technique works best with those. As well, you can use the Simon Says stamp or W+9 dye inks. So they have very similar formulation. They're made by the same manufacturer, so other dye inks won't really work with this technique. So I'm stamping this hibiscus flower, and I started with soft pull shadow ink, and then the second step was just pull shadow ink mid-tone, and then I'm going with orange soda. And for the fourth step, I'm gonna use even darker ink. And I'm using the, I believe it's bubble gum. I'll have all the supplies listed in my post, so you'll be able to go to my blog and see all the supplies that I'm using. So I'm just doing now the smaller hibiscus flower. And after this flower, I'm just gonna skip to the completed card because the stamping is not really a big deal. You know how to stamp, how to do color layering, and I have more videos doing on how to use your color layering stamps with the Misty tool. So I'm positioning the second, and I'm using butter bar and orange soda inks for the second hibiscus flower. And I'm gonna stamp the center with pale tomato, and I'm gonna use some grape juice for the fourth step for those little tiny dots. So there we have that one. And then I'm doing the little last layer, and I'm using the grape juice Hero Arts shadow ink. So here's my completed card panel. Next, I'm gonna turn it over, and I'm gonna color on top of it using my Chameleon blender pen. So I'm just covering that, making sure the cardstock is soaked and you're able to see the image. This is how my second technique was born. I was looking at this as I was coloring with my blender pen. I noticed that this looks like the image has been, vellum has been put on top of the image, like vellum overlay. So, and then I was afraid that when it dries, the colors will kind of disappear, but I dried it with my heat gun and the colors didn't disappear. So even now, like a few days later, the colors are still very nice and bright. So after it dries, it doesn't, the colors don't disappear. So I'm just coloring, making sure that everything is soaked, so that blending solution has time to soak in the cardstock and kind of make those colors bleed into each other. So in a little bit, I'm gonna turn over my card panel, and you will be able to see that effect. So I'm just making sure that everything is covered. I'm gonna turn it over and make sure, kind of see if I have missed spots or where I need to add more colorless blender. So here's, and you notice like those little tiny flowers. Some are very sharp, so that means there was no, I forgot to color over them. So I'm just going on the back and adding some more of that colorless blender and filling in the missing spots that I missed before, and kind of going over those overlapping colors. Make sure that they bleed into each other. So here's my card panel, and now it's wet. I'll let it dry, and you're able to see how those colors bled into each other. In the meantime, by the magic of YouTube, I die cut my card panel. So next, I noticed that I missed a couple spots. So I'm just going with the bullet nib of the Chameleon colorless blender, and I'm just coloring over them. So I'm just making sure the ink is soaked, the colorless blender is soaked into the cardstock and interacts with the ink. And you will notice as well on the bottom, like the scrap piece of cardstock that I have, like those inks kind of bled onto that scrap paper. That's why I have it underneath. So now we're done. And I noticed that I've smeared some ink onto my card base, but no worries. I decided to put this die cut prayer, which is as well from paper tray ink, on top of it to kind of hide that little smear. Or you can go with a sand eraser and try to erase that. So I'm using fine tip glue. I'm actually using the Pico embellisher, the clear Pico embellisher, to adhere my die cut. Next, I stamped the sentiment and adhered my panel onto some white cardstock using mounting tape. So next I'll show you the second technique, which is pretty much similar. We're just using the back. And for this one, I've already stamped my card panel, but I stamped it on the opposite side. So when I turn it over, that image it's in the same place as on my first card. So next I'm going again. I sped up the video here quite a bit, so you're not very bored watching me color again with the colorless blender. And this one is looks like that there's a piece of vellum on top of it. I'll do comparison in a little bit so you will be able to see that after I'm done with the coloring. So, and I'm trying here more to add even more than I did for the previous one, more colorless blender, and make sure that those images really pop on the back of the card, because we're going to use the back of the card. The back of the cardstock, not the card. The back of our panel. So I'm just going over again. Make sure those images really show nicely on the back, which will be our front. So I'm pretty much done here. And just making sure all these little flowers are covered nicely and they're showing on the back. And I'm just going again, kind of soaking that cardstock with the colorless blender. So I think we're pretty much done here. We have nice soft look on this panel. So next what I'll do is I die cut my panel, and then I'm going with the heat gun and making sure that everything is dry and making sure that everything is showing nicely. So there we have that. So now we're pretty much done, and I'm just stamping the sentiment and adhering my my die cut prayer. And then I'm using the Misty to position that, and I'm using the transparency grid. You can download this from the My Sweet Petunia website and then just print it on some transparency. So I'm stamping with Smoky Shadow. I think that's the name of the ink from Stampin' Up. It's like lighter gray. I thought because the look of this image was softer that I was going to go with softer colors than compared to the first one where I have brighter colors and I'm using the black ink. So I'm just adhering that prayer die cut, just pressing it with my acrylic block to make sure it's adhered nicely, and then just drying that ink because I stamped it 3 times to get like more intense, and then I smeared a little bit, so I'm going with the sand eraser. I apologize for the view of the edge of my glasses that you saw. So now I'm looking here how it will look on a white card base, and then I decided to go with the smoky shadow. So in here you can see I have piece of vellum over my first card, and you can see how they look alike. This is still more brighter. If I do like 2 layers, they'll look very similar. So that's why I decided to name this technique Faux Vellum overlay. So next what I'll do is just adhere my panel onto my card base. And my card base, usually I do top folding card bases because they're easier for photographing, because they stand up nicely and it's much easier to photograph them. So now here are the cards side by side, and I have the piece of vellum on top of it, so you can see that similarity. So thanks for watching, and I hope that you learned something new, and I'll be back next week with another video how to stretch your Chameleon pens. Thanks for watching. Bye!